Alright, today we're gonna continue along with creating item pickups. Today we're gonna cover the rocket, the propeller hat, and a couple other ones. And if you had fun watching the first video, this one's gonna be a lot similar, just a couple other techniques to create these other item pickups.
So today we're going to be talking more about the item pickups that will be found in our Doodle Jump game. Now in the previous video we showed you the spring and the trampoline. In this video we're going to be talking about the jetpack, the propeller hat, and the shield. So I've gone ahead and created these item pickups, and in this video we're just going to be showing you how you can go about recreating these item pickups. So the first thing that we'll do is the jetpack, and I'll go to our prefabs folder and I'll drag in the jetpack pickup into our scene, and then I'll go ahead and hit play and show you how it works. So our main character is currently jumping on the platform, and then I'll move over to the jetpack pickup, and then we have the jetpack attached to our main character with a little flame animation, and then after a couple seconds the jetpack falls off. So first we'll show you how to create the jetpack pickup game object, which is the object right here that we need in order to trigger the jetpack function when our main character collides with it. So all it is a 2D sprite with a box collider. So you'll go to the top, you click on game object, 2D object, and then sprite. Then you'll need to rename it, and you also want to add a tag for your game object, and we just added the tag jetpack. Once you've done that, you're going to want to add the sprite, and the sprite that we used for the jetpack pickup is the straight on view of the jetpack, not the side view, because the side view is for after you pick it up. And so you'll want to go to your sprites folder and find it in your sprite sheet, and then drag it into your sprite renderer folder, and we actually have a second sprite sheet for it right here. And then once you have it there, you'll want to make sure that it's the right scale, so just make sure that it compares correctly to your main character, that it's not too big or too little. Then you'll need to add a box collider 2D, and so that's add component, physics 2D, box collider 2D. And it should be sized correctly once you add the box collider, but if not, you can always change it with these settings here. And for this item, it doesn't really matter whether your box collider is set to trigger or not. So we've left it as a collider and not a trigger, but you can definitely click that button. It actually won't really affect the gameplay. So once you've done that, you can go ahead and save this as a prefab by clicking on it in your hierarchy and dragging it into your prefabs folder. And then after you save it as a prefab, you can leave it in your scene view so that you can test it once we've finished the rest of our code. And then the next thing that you'll need to create is a child object to your box dude, which is the jetpack spawn, which is an empty game object that we've positioned off to the left of our main character. And the purpose of this object is so that we can grab its transform and use its position and rotation in code. Now after you've created the jetpack spawn, it's time to create the active jetpack that will be attached to our main character. So I'll go ahead and drag it into the scene view so that you can see everything it entails. So here we have an empty game object that we've created, and we've called it jetpack. And then underneath it we have another jetpack, and you can call it something else. You could call this one jetpack sprite. And so I'll rename it jetpack sprite. And then below that you're going to have the fire for your game object. The jetpack sprite is just a 2D sprite that we've dragged in the side view of the jetpack, and then it has an animation component. And the animation component, we've created an animation. I'll go ahead and show you what that is. We've called it jetpack fall. So if you don't have this window, you'll need to click on window animation, and then you'll need to create a new animation, and then you'll need to make sure that you have the position and rotation properties for your jetpack sprite. Now the important thing to remember for this animation is that when your main character is at the top of his jump, you want the jetpack to fall from that position to below the screen. And so the highest point that our box dude will reach is 1 in the Y direction. And so we've set the parent object of our jetpack to 1 in the Y position, and then our child object we want to fall far enough down that it reaches below the screen. So here in our first keyframe, the position and rotation of our object is set to 0. And then here, at the end of our animation, you can see that the Y position of our jetpack is below the screen, and that's what we want. And then we've added a little offset in the X direction, and we've changed the rotation to make it look like it's falling more. And then we've also added this keyframe here at frame 7 to make the transition a little more smooth. So I'll go ahead and show you what this animation looks like. So it just plays back and forth, and it falls from our box dude off to the below the screen. Once you've created that animation, you'll want to make sure that it's dragged into this animation field on your animation component for your jetpack. Now it's time to make the flames for our jetpack. And so we've added another sprite component that's a child to the jetpack sprite. And we've dragged in the first flame that we have. We've drawn multiple flame sprites. You can see here we have 4. And so we've just dragged in the first one, and then we've added an animator component because we're changing the 2D sprite of the object. And so to add this component, you can actually just go to your animation window and create a new animation. And we've called this animation Fire. So the first thing that you'll do after you've created this animation is you'll set the sample rate to 20, and then you'll go ahead and just select the 4 sprites that you have for the flame, and then drag it into your animation timeline. After you do that, you should have exactly what we have here, and we'll play through this animation. So you can see that it cycles through the 4 images, so it looks like the jetpack has flames coming out the bottom of it. Once you finish this animation, you can go ahead and click this record button, which will complete your animation. Now you can save your jetpack as a prefab and delete it from your scene view. Now we need to write the code for all of these interactions. So we'll go ahead and go to your body script, and you'll also want your main character feet script. So there's a couple variables that we'll need to add to both of these scripts before we start coding anything else. So the first one is this public game object, which we've called jetpack prefab, and that's in our body script. This is where we're going to save the prefab for our jetpack. Then in our main character script, we need to create these 2 variables here. The first one is a game object, which we call jetpack, and the second one is a transform, which we call jetpack spawn, and you'll want to make sure that both of those are public. Then we'll go back to our body script, and in our onTriggerEnterToD function, below where we check if the other.tag is equal to black hole, we'll add another else if statement which says if other.tag is equal to jetpack. So this is saying that if our main character runs into the jetpack pickup that we created, then we'll access the isJumping variable in our feet script and set it equal to true, and then we'll access the jetpack variable that we created in our feet script and set it equal to the instantiation of our jetpack prefab, and we'll use the jetpack spawn position and rotation. And after this instantiation statement, you need to add an asGameObject and then your semicolon. The next line of code is setting your jetpack as a child object to your box dude. To do that, you need to access your feet script, then you'll say .jetpack, then you want its transform, and you'll say .setParent. And setParent is a member function, and so you'll need to pass in the parameters of which game object's transform you want to set jetpack a child object to. So we get our feet script, then our box dude, then the transform of our box dude. Then you'll close it and add a semicolon. Next line of code is to turn off the box collider of our main character's feet. So we'll say feetScript.feetBox.enabled is equal to false. And next you'll want to destroy the jetpack pickup so that you can't keep picking it up. And so you'll say destroy, and then you'll access other.gameObject because the other .gameObject is the jetpack pickup. Next line of code, we're setting the last jump equal to jetpack, and then we're turning off the gravity scale of our box dude and setting his velocity equal to 0. Once you've written all that, we can go over to our main character feat script, and in our update function we'll need to add another if statement below our trampoline, which is else if controller.isGameOver is equal to false and last jump is equal to jetpack. Then we'll execute our jetpack function, which we need to create next. And so below our trampoline function and our IEnumerator for our trampoline, we'll create a void function, call it jetpack function. And then for the most part, this is all the same as our other functions. The only difference is that we're starting a new coroutine. And so we've called this coroutine jetpack wait time. And below here, we've created the IEnumerator jetpack wait time function. And so we say yield return new wait 4 seconds, and we put 1f, so we want it to wait for 1 whole second. And then after it waits for 1 second, we want to turn off the flames of the jetpack. So to do that, we'll access the transform of our jetpack game object, and then we'll need to use the member function getChild. And then the parameter that we're passing in is the index for which order our child comes in. And so for the flames of our jetpack, it's the child of the jetpack sprite, which is the child of our jetpack game object. And so we'll access the jetpack sprite by typing getChild and then put a 0. And then we'll access the flames by typing getChild and then put another 0. Then we'll say .gameObject, because we want to access the whole game object of the flames and not the transform. And then we'll say .setActive and we'll pass in false. Next we'll need to reset the parent of our jetpack game object. So we'll say jetpack.transform.setParent, and we want it to set it equal to null so that there's no parent over our jetpack. And the reason why we want to do that is so that when we play our jetpack fall animation on the next line, we don't have our jetpack fall and then change directions if our main character changes directions. And so with that, we need to now play the jetpack fall animation. And so to do that, we need to access the jetpack sprite, which is a child of our jetpack empty game object. And so we'll say jetpack.transform.getChild0, which is our jetpack sprite. Then we say .getComponentAnimation, then parentheses, then .play, and then in parentheses we specify which animation we want to play. After that, we're going to wait for another half second and back on the box collider of our main character's feet. So we'll say feet box.enable equals true. Then we'll want to turn gravity back on to scale 1. Then we'll want to wait for 0.4 seconds and then destroy our jetpack game object. These last 2 lines of code make it so that our jetpack is destroyed after our animation is played and our jetpack is now off the screen. Now all this code might be a little confusing because it's always a little tricky to understand someone else's code. But if you're having any problems with this code, you can always leave us a comment below and we'll try to answer it to the best of our ability. But after you've finished writing all that, our jetpack should be completed. So you'll want to make sure that you save both your main character feat script and your body script, and then we'll need to go back to Unity and you'll need to drag in a couple of those variables. So you'll click on your box dude's feet and then you'll see where you put your jetpack spawn. You'll need to drag this jetpack spawn that we created into that field. Then on the body you'll need to drag in your jetpack prefab, which is this one here, the one with the side view and the flames, not the jetpack pickup. So once you've finished dragging in those variables, you can go ahead and test your jetpack to see if it works. Go ahead and hit the play button, see if your main character will do everything he does with ours. Now we'll go ahead and show you the propeller hat pickup. So we'll drag in our hat pickup, and then I'll go ahead and hit play and show you what it does. So there's a couple differences between the propeller hat and the jetpack. The first thing that you want to do is create the hat pickup, and so it requires the same steps that we've taken to create the jetpack pickup. You'll need a 2D sprite, and we've dragged in the image of our stationary hat, the one without the moving propeller. And then you'll need to add a box collider, and you'll also want to rename it and re-tag it, and also make sure that it's the right scale. And the scale should be in proportion with your box dude. Once you've finished that, you can go ahead and save this as a prefab. Now we'll need to add an empty game object, like we did with our jetpack, to our box dude, which is for our hat spawn. And our hat spawn is positioned near the top of our main character's head. And you might need to fine-tune the hat spawn position so that when we instantiate our hat onto our main character, it is in the right position. Once you've done that, it's time to create our active propeller hat. So I'll go ahead and drag the prefab of our propeller hat into our scene. First thing that you notice is that we have an empty game object that we've named hat prefab. Below that we have our hat sprite, and the sprite that we'll be using is the one with the stationary propeller. Then you'll need to add an animation component, so you'll click on Add Component under Miscellaneous and Animation. Then we'll need to create the animation for our hat, so you'll go to your animation window and create a new animation, save it in your animation folder, and this animation is going to be almost exactly the same as the jetpack fall animation. The only difference is that with the second keyframe, we want our hat to go up a little bit so it looks like it pops off our character's head rather than phases through his body. Then for the last keyframe, you'll want to make sure that the hat is below the screen when the parent object of your hat sprite is at the highest point of your main character's jump. Once you finish that, you'll want to drag the animation into your animation component. Then we have one more child object, which is child to your hat sprite, and we call it spin or hat spin, and this is going to get the animation of the propeller moving. So we've changed our sample rate to 10, and then we've dragged in the two other sprites that we have for our propeller hat with the spinning propeller into our timeline. Once you have that, you can go ahead and hit the record button, and then you can go ahead and save your hat prefab as a prefab and delete it from your scene. Now we'll need to write the code for our propeller hat function. So we'll go to the same scripts that we have, our body script and our main character feed script. The variables that we'll need to write in our main character feed script is a public game object for our hat, and then a public transform for our hat spawn. And in the body script, we'll need to add a game object, which is for our hat prefab. Once you have those variables, we can go into our onTriggerEnter function, and below our if statement, where we check the other tag for jetpack, we'll add another else if statement, which will read other.tag is equal to hat. And so if our main character runs into the prefab for our hat pickup, then we'll execute this if statement. And so everything in this if statement is the same as we've done for our jetpack if statement. The only difference is this line here, where we save the instantiation of our hat prefab at the location of our hat spawn's position and our hat spawn's rotation as a game object into our hat variable on our feed script. Once you've written all that, we'll go to our main character feed script, and in our update we'll need to add another else if statement which says if controller.isGameOver is equal to false and last jump is equal to hat, then we'll execute our hat function, which we will now create below our jetpack function. So here we've created a void hat function, and it contains the same things as our jetpack function. The only difference is our start coroutine is for our hat wait time. And right here we've created our IEnumerator hat wait time that we're calling, and we have pretty much the same things as well as our jetpack. The only difference is that we're accessing our hat here rather than our jetpack, and we're also destroying our hat game object. Once you have this function written, you can go ahead and save both files again and go back to Unity. where we will connect the needed variables. So on the feet of our box dude, we'll need to drag in our hat spawn, which is here. And then on our body, we'll need to drag in our hat prefab, which is in your prefab folder. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and test your hat, see if it works. Now the last item pickup that we'll be showing you how to create is the shield. And so I'll go ahead and drag in our shield prefab that I've created and show you how it works. So we have our main character and he's jumping, and as soon as he runs into the shield, he gets a bubble put on him, and then our bubble blinks after it's running out of time and disappears. So the first thing that you'll need to create is the shield pickup. And so here we have the shield pickup, and it's a 2D sprite with a box collider just like the other pickups, and we've renamed it and also re-tagged it. Once you have all that, you can go ahead and save it as a prefab. The next thing that we'll need to create is the bubble that will go on our main character. And this is a little bit different than what we've done with the propeller hat and the jetpack. So what we've done is we've created another child object to our box dude, which is a 2D sprite, and we called it shield. Then we deactivated the sprite renderer and we dragged in our bubble that we've drawn right here. Then you'll need to add the animation component and create a new animation, which we have here. We called it shield fade, and we set the sample rate to 10, and then every other frame for a whole second we toggle on and off our sprite renderer. So under add property sprite renderer, there should be a property called enabled, and then you'll just need to click on each keyframe and select it or deselect it. Once you have that animation created, you can drag it into your animation component, and now we need to write the code needed for our shield. So we'll now go to our body script that we've been working on, and we'll add a couple variables. So the first variable is a public sprite renderer, and we called it overshield, and this is going to be how we activate and deactivate the bubble that goes on our main character. The next one is a public bool, and we called it has shield, and we set it equal to false to start with. Then our next one is a public animation, which we called shield animation. Then in our onTriggerEnter2D function, we'll need to add another else if statement that says if other.tag is equal to shield. So if our main character runs into our shield pickup, then we'll say overshield.enabled is equal to true. So we're going to turn on the bubble that's on our main character. Then we'll set has shield equal to true, and we'll destroy the other.gameObject, which is destroying the shield pickup. Then we'll start a new coroutine, which we called shield time, and in this IEnumerator shield time function, we'll say yield returned new, wait for 2 seconds, and you can make this longer if you want it to be 3 seconds or 5 seconds. This is how long your shield will last before it starts fading away. But we've put 2 seconds, and then we say shield animation.play shield fade. Then we wait for a whole nother second. Then we say shield animation.stop, so we have to stop the shield fade animation. Then we say overshield.enabled is equal to false, and has shield is equal to false. Now the last thing that you'll need to change in your body script is in the if statements of the monster. You'll say if other.tag is equal to monster and has shield is equal to false. This will make it so that when your shield is set to true, or has shield is set to true, you won't be affected by the monsters. You can also add this and has shield is equal to false into your black hole if statement, but for us we decided not to. Once you have all that, you can go ahead and save this file and then go back to Unity. In Unity, you'll need to connect a couple of the variables to your body. The first one is your overshield variable, and to connect that, you'll click on your shield and drag it into that field. Next, you'll need to add the shield animation, which is also on your shield. So you click on that and drag it into that field. Once you've connected all those variables, you can go ahead and test your shield pickup. Once you've finished testing the shield pickup, you can go ahead and delete it from your scene. Make sure that you save your scene and your project. Alright, we hope you enjoyed this video where we showed you the rest of the item pickups that we have for our Doodle Jump game. And if you have any questions, because some of it might be a little confusing, you can leave them in the comments below.
Thanks again for watching, and please subscribe.